Greetings. This is an intro to my intro to this year-end Frankly. What you're about to see, a 13-minute Frankly, I had my staff and Inner Circle watch it, and they're like, Nate, that's pretty doom and gloom for a year-end holiday season. And that's true. Our situation is different than it was 5 or 10 years ago when we couldn't imagine one thing that could go wrong in the next week in our world. And now everything is interconnected. And what I'm trying to do here is act as a witness and a synthesizer of how these various risks fit together. So I'm not going to apologize that the following short reflection is on the dark side. I'm trying to describe what 2024 may look like, and there's a lot of things that are converging. And as from day one of this podcast and this Frankly Sandbox side channel, I want to be honest, have candor, and talk to you, the viewers, on things relevant to your lives, our lives. So here's the original Frankly. Greetings. We're approaching the end of the year. This will be my last Frankly in 2023. Later today, I'm going to record another one or two to be broadcast sometime in January. I am taking a 6-week technology hiatus, which I'll explain why that's relevant to the followers of this website and podcast in my next Frankly. Here I'd like to talk about some themes ahead of 2024. And longtime followers of this podcast know that I'm not trying to predict the future. I'm trying to explain how the systemic parts and processes of the human situation fit together and what that might infer about our future preparations, plans, interventions. So here are a few themes that I think are going to be worth watching in 2024. First of all, climate change. I just had Leon Simons on a podcast. His podcast will be out sometime in January. He's the climate scientist who drilled down and did a Sherlock Holmes treatment of how aerosol sulfates historically and recently have been masking the warming that is due to the thermal imbalance in our incoming solar radiation versus how much is outgoing. So both James Hansen and Leon and others believe that the combination of the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, the PDO, switching from La Nina the last few years to El Nino, and the reduced masking effect of aerosols is going to bring our current 1.4 or 1.5 degrees Celsius in late 2023 up another half a degree Celsius. So by summer, we might, for a month or so, see 2 degrees Celsius over pre-industrial baseline. That's going to be crazy. That is going to be horrible for Europe, the Asian subcontinent, etc. If that happens, lots of people are going to wake up and freak out and probably die, sadly, to be honest. If we do pierce 2 degrees, it may be kind of a emotional wake-up call for humanity to do something. Clearly, we've done nothing so far, but it's kind of like arguing with a forest fire, but at least there'll be more citizen political awareness that this is real and it's serious, if not for us, for our children, grandchildren, and the biosphere. So the next 6 months, there's going to be a lot of news in the climate space and global ecosystem craziness, I expect. The second theme is related. If that happens, and if many other things happen, it kicks in antibodies to people who have built their identity and reputation around that not happening or anything else not happening, end of growth or AI or anything else. And so I think cognitive dissonance with humans in aggregate is going to increase because as the futures that we attached our identities to or our hopes and dreams and beliefs not only don't manifest, but the exact opposite is happening. People adopt strange behavioral, vocal stories. And I think cognitive dissonance is evident in so many areas of our culture. And I expect that's going to accelerate. If we do hit 2 degrees Celsius by summer, I really wonder what those people who say climate change is a socialist hoax or the climate's warmed before and it will again and humans don't have a role. I wonder what stories they will be saying. Less important for the long term, but much more important for our near term. Another theme is geopolitics. There is a changing world order. The US, NATO, Russia battle within Ukraine is not over. And each side is going to increasingly get desperate on not losing. And there may be things like false flags or extreme reactions. And it was my hope that the Middle East would kind of declaw the nuclear war risk in Ukraine and Russia, NATO. Maybe it has. I don't know. But broader situation is we're heading from a unipolar world to a multipolar world, and there will be lots of different agreements and financial new partnerships and new energy and commodity things. A subset of geopolitics is the issue of choke points in global transportation. The Panama Canal, because of drought, is running out of fresh water and able to fill the locks. On a larger risk is this week. I'm recording this on Sunday, December 17th. This week, the situation with the Suez Canal, which is close to Yemen, and the Yemeni Houthi rebels are attacking ships, and many of the world's shipping companies are saying this is not an acceptable risk, and they're choosing to not go through the Suez Canal and instead go around the Cape Horn in South Africa, which adds probably a week or two from a Singapore to Rotterdam route, and also roughly double the cost. I don't know that for sure, but it's in that ballpark. I don't think the United States will allow this because it will cause inflation and supply chain disruptions, et cetera. So I expect there's going to be a protection of the Suez Canal in the near future. And then the biggest choke point is, of course, the Strait of Hormuz, where around 20% of the world's oil is transported every day, around 17 million barrels on ships. And if that were to be disrupted by any military or other means, that would cause major chaos in global financial oil and delivery markets of things. Longtime followers of this podcast see that we have a 6-continent supply chain, and it's predicated on peace and credit and available, affordable oil, and all those things are now less certain going forward. What else to watch in 2024? AI is going to be a bigger deal as far as its behavior, its impact on our behaviors and our culture than many expect. Yesterday, I was watching a football game, and in the box seats at a football game, people were on their phones watching things while the real football game was on in front of them. And this is an example of hypernormal stimuli that things on the phone shout louder to our brain than the things on the real field. And I think AI is going to exponentially increase that because all the color and the perfectly situated to your brain and the beautiful artistic brainstem stimuli is going to even be more than we're currently used to, and we're just going to lose people to the fantasy world, among many other influences of AI, including some systemic risks. So AI is going to be an unfolding story. There are some people who think we don't have the energy to power the servers, and it's going to cause disruptions on energy. I think it's going to accelerate damage on the environmental front, and we'll have to see what happens there. I think another theme in 2024 and beyond is a stretching of the haves versus the have-nots. And I may do another, frankly, if I have time, on how we define haves and have-nots, because there's a lot of things that we have that are not measurable in monetary or bank account terms. But I think, at least in the United States, there are a lot of people who are suffering already. And the sugar high from the COVID stimulus is running out. We have higher interest rates. We have higher car payments, higher house payments. 40%, if you watched last week's Reality Roundtable, 40% of U.S. households are asset limited, income constrained, and yet they're still employed. I think the wealth inequality, when it gets to the point where people can't afford their health insurance, their health payments, and their rent and their food, it's going to be bad, and I think that's coming. Of course, the big story, of course, any of the stories that I just talked about could be big, but the U.S. election is going to be kind of a keep things in a holding pattern until October, November. And unfortunately, no matter who wins, Biden or Trump or someone else, a third of the country is going to be pissed off. And I think the splintering of the tribes, which happens from polarization, which happens because our present is tougher than the past, which happens because AI is going to hone in on people's confirmation bias and beliefs. There's going to be all kinds of deep fakes. It's going to be nasty. And I wish it could be avoided, because the things that the United States faces, the things that our world faces, are going to be the same no matter whether the Republicans win or the Democrats win. We need some sort of a civic resolve that we suppress our identities and get beyond the technology and the blame. But I'm not holding my breath. I'm really worried about the social discourse, because if we can't talk to our neighbors or people that disagree with us, then we're not going to be able to solve these issues. Lastly, of course, we have managed to keep our central bank finger in the financial dike to hold things together. There are still many policies in place from the great financial crisis, the Great Recession in 2009, that were temporary, that are still ongoing. Global central bank balance sheets have ballooned. The Bank of Japan is printing money and buying their own stocks and bonds, et cetera. And so I think we're going to see another version of the banking crisis, where we now look at the larger banks. Reverse repo rates are going to potentially require Fed intervention. And I think the larger story is it's the central bank monetary narrative meets the biophysical ecological narrative. And as oil peaks and declines, as climate change requires a lot more spending and things to mitigate, we can't just cut rates because the economy's low and then there's more inflation. I think the Fed is and other central banks are about to have big problems. So all this being said, we have a lot of work to do in your communities, in your own life, in my own life. And I've got a lot to say and hope you tune in next year. There'll be another one or two Franklies that I'll record before I leave. Be well, everyone.